Hello, good afternoon, good morning to all the participants in our webinar. Once again, I would like to give you a warm welcome. We are very pleased here to today present you our first webinar on sustainable logistics focused on heavy industries. The idea and the intention of this webinar today is on the one hand side to inspire, to share and to connect with people. So what we would like to do is everybody talks about sustainability and how this impacts or how this can impact your industry. We want to make it very actionable today. We want to share best practices which are used in the industry, and we would also provide and make a platform where we can connect with peers in the industry to share best practices. So that's the idea of today. What we have on the agenda for this webinar is a presentation by Buck Consulting International Group that will share and give some insights and key drivers in supply chain for heavy industries. This will be done by Robert Wieggers, which will be followed by Ahlers insights and very actionable tools and key learnings from the industry presented by Jeroen de Ryck. And this will be followed by a panel discussion where we will talk about the evolution and upcoming trends. This is also the platform where we can address questions which can pop up during the webinar. So for these questions, there is a chat platform. Please feel free to use this. We will have time at the end of the webinar to address those questions and hopefully give our perspective and answer your questions. So today we will have 3 speakers in the webinar. First of all, we will have Robert Wieggers, who is principal consultant in the Buck Group. Robert is very experienced and brings his insight on supply chain design, 4PL setups, out and insourcing decisions. So today he will talk mainly about concepts like decentralization, decarbonization, how end-to-end visibility in supply chains can be addressed. Robert will today give us an external and expert view on what those concepts and events are in the industry. This will be followed by Jeroen de Ryck. Jeroen de Ryck will share his insights from the industry, from the field. Jeroen will give examples on how we do certain things within Ahlers. Jeroen is very experienced in mining, metallurgy, project business in general. Myself, I'm Director Strategic Platforms within Ahlers. I have been working and have my experience background in logistics service provider for heavy industries, followed by a short intermezzo in strategic consulting, after which I took up the role of Director Strategic Platforms within Ahlers. And for Ahlers, I'm currently developing the sustainability service offering, and I will be the moderator for the webinar today. So without further delay, I would like to give the word to Robert, who will share his insights from the Buck Consulting on how what the key drivers are in the industry.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for the introduction. Also, warm welcome from my side, of course, and hopefully I can share a bit of interesting information with you today. Before I dive into that, give me 1 minute to, let's see, the mandatory BCI promo. BCI stands for, like Tom already said, for Buck Consults International. We're a mid-sized consulting firm founded almost 40 years ago. We celebrate the 40th anniversary next year. And from, let's say, founding the firm in Nijmegen in the Netherlands, We now are what we call a global boutique, and that means that we do specific services, but we try to do them on a global scale. And we do that from our offices in Europe, head office in Nijmegen, but also from the sites we have in the US, as well as the offices in Asia Pacific, like you see here on screen, Shanghai, Taiwan, and in Singapore. The activities we specialize in are next to network design, also helping companies with their make or buy decisions. So in and outsourcing decisions, and it can be selecting the right transport or logistics partner, but also IT partners. We look at footprint optimization, location advice, and also everything linked to transport and logistics procurement. Control tower and transport management solution are also in our portfolio. And last but not least, we also do a lot of implementation of the solutions there. And I'm specifically proud of the fact that already for the third or fourth year in a row, Forbes magazine has selected us as a mid-sized firm as one of the best management consultants both in the US as well as on a global scale. So that's definitely something we as company are very proud of. In the past 40 years, or almost 40 years, I should say, we've worked for a lot of companies, I think almost 2,000 in total, and also a lot of companies in the industrial and spare parts sector, as we call the heavy industry sectors internally, are also linked to the companies we can call our clients or former clients. And it's also good to see that a number of clients of ours are also in this webinar. So a special welcome also to the people I've been working with previously. So that's it about the BCI promo. So let's now dive into the topics. The topic of today, and I first would like to raise or to start with the business dynamics and the reasons why we, as BCI, see a lot of companies moving into the review of the network to look at more different solutions, also more sustainable solutions. And specifically for equipment or heavy equipment and spare parts, we see a lot of things changing. Everyone knows the disruptions currently going on. It started maybe with COVID already, or even before that with the volcano in Iceland. But nowadays we see, let's say, the disruptions are becoming more the standard, and they don't seem to be going away, either intensifying. And that means that the needs and the requirements of your supply chain are also definitely increasing. So being agile, being resilient, of course, these are the nice buzzwords, but then you need to have them. You need to be fast. You need to be able to change, and hopefully I can share a bit of insights today on how we see that you could make that happen. Next to that, some reasons for change. I'm not going to talk through all of them. That would go a bit too far, but I think the uncertainty, which I already shortly discussed, is there. The enhancement of margin, the circularity, so everything to do with the environment, carbon footprint, etc. The de-risking, I think, is a very important one for companies like yourselves. The global trade management, with all things happening, everyone's of course looking across the Atlantic what will happen, or if you're in the US, you'll look at that, let's say, from at home, but look at what happens next week, because of course there will be some differences whether Trump or Harris is elected president in the US, of course. And last but not least, the need for speed is also a very important topic to look at. So we dive into two trends or two things we see happening in the market, and that's on one hand decentralization, on the other hand decarbonization. I would like to dive into a study we did end of last year together with Supply Chain Media on these two elements. And let's first look into decentralization. What we see is a lot of companies thinking or even acting on moving production closer to home. And closer to home is either towards the US or to Europe, so away more and more from Asia. So everyone knows the strategies on China +1, looking at companies like Vietnam and those countries to be there, to be less dependent on China. And it's, like I said, less dependent on China, but also more closer to where the current customer base is. And it's of course easy said than easy to say, hey, we need to be closer to the customers, or we need to have a regional setup instead of the previous global setup, to at least to have a fallback scenario in case the global supply chains are down. But next to finding the right solution, the right site, it's also definitely important to have, say, the right supplier base there. I mean, if you are in China and you have your full supplier base there, it's not that you just copy-paste that supplier base towards Europe or to the US in that sense. So that is definitely something, a movement which is happening, but not always done, let's say, in a few weeks. That really can take years of preparation, etc. It also has an impact on, let's say, the distribution setups or the network setups. But I'll touch upon that during one of the next slides. The second element of the study I just spoke about was about decarbonization. Like Tom said, I'm working in this industry for 26 years, not always as a consultant, but I started as a consultant and currently I'm a consultant. When I started 26 years ago, we were doing network studies, and cost and service were pretty much the only two elements we looked at. Those were the main criteria for doing network redesign. But that changed. I think two key elements which were added is, on one hand, risk, so being able to mitigate risk, to de-risk your supply chain, and the other one, and that's one which is really increasing in importance, is carbon. So pretty much every company nowadays has its view on how to reduce carbon and how to, let's say, enhance their supply chain and be more environmental friendly. If you are, like most of you are in the heavy industries and you are in Europe, I think the decentralization and decarbonization can pretty much go hand in hand when you look at, for example, the CBAM regulations for the imports of steel and that kind of stuff. So that is definitely important to also take into account. And what we've seen is that in general, decentral solutions often also show a lower carbon solution, because warehousing in general can be done pretty much carbon neutral with the modern warehouses nowadays. I'm talking mostly about the US and the European solution, I have to say. And if you go, let's say, the larger parts of your transport with larger shipments or full truckloads or full containers and that kind of stuff, and only the last mile, the last few miles via a decentralized setup or a smaller shipment setup, then the overall carbon in your supply chain is definitely lower in that sense. So let's move to, let's say, the third topic, and that's about how does network design look like for companies in the heavy industries. When we do network design, we usually look at four elements. The first one is the network design itself. So that's how many DCs do you need? Where should they be? What is the location, etc. Really, the physical infrastructure in that sense. And it's also important to take that as a first step, because in general, when you define your supply chain, 80% of your cost is already linked to that one. So the other elements can tweak the remaining 20, but if the 80% has high cost, then it's difficult to really get that to a decent level. Second is the routing. So how do you go through your supply chain, from your raw materials, your production, your DCs towards your customers? And I think specifically companies like Ahlers can really give some good ideas and some solutions on how to do that better, from the warehouses, from the transport solutions in that sense. The third is inventory. In COVID times, inventory was not really liked. Everyone wanted to get rid of inventory, but nowadays we see more and more that inventory is an important element to, I said, keep the supply chain going in that sense. So, and last but not least is end-to-end solutions. So really getting control over your complete supply chain. I'll touch upon that one a bit later in this presentation. But first, technique should work, but it doesn't. There it is. So first, looking at the various network setups we see. This is specifically for companies in the industries where you're active in. We really see a difference between the finished products and the spare parts in that sense, and even between those two product groups, you see differentiation. If you have your full make-to-order products, it's obvious you produce them, ship them to your customer with at least handling in between. That's the most common solution. But if you go to make-to-stock or even make-to-catalog, you have catalog products, then let's say thinking or rethinking your supply chain can come into play at certain moments in time. If you look at spare parts, there's a clear distinction between your critical parts, which you always want to have close to your customers, where speed and availability is of the essence, versus, let's say, more the commodity spare parts, where the availability is, of course, important, but cost is a more important factor. And all those elements, let's say, account for various types of network setup, for various types of solutions which are in place or should be in place. And like I said before, we really see more and more the move towards decentral solutions in that sense, not only for the spare parts but also for the catalog products, and sometimes even for the make to stock products. One example I can maybe quickly refer to is a company which was really in producing spinning machinery, so the machines that create clothes, and they really are active in the countries where clothes are made. So that's really the low labor cost. A lot of companies in Asia, a lot of elements which are a lot of countries which are difficult to reach, and there you end up in a solution that you really need to be in a country. I mean, if you go into the Turkey area and look at the stand countries, as they call it, moving between those countries is not as easy as if you are in Europe moving within the European Union. And those elements you definitely need to take into account when going after that. So what is it all about? So what do we look at when we look at supply chain optimization? Clearly said, it's not only about cost. In general, I mentioned the 4 C's. It's cost, it's customer service, it's conditions like risk and all those elements, the global trade management elements. And last but not least, you also have the carbon or the sustainability elements. I think nowadays, really the balance of those elements is more and more getting into play. Not for all companies, not for all regions yet, but in our view, it's really in the future more and more about the 4 C's and not only about customer service and cost. So I think it's safe to say that remains a main topic. The last element and the last bullet element of this webinar, at least apart from mine, is about visibility and control. This is also what you see on screen, some results of a webinar or a survey we recently did. And there we saw that companies really want to move to more creation of more end-to-end visibility and more control. Companies say nowadays that they have it around 30%. They really want to move it up to 70% in 3 years, and that's a big step. I think if everyone succeeds in that's interesting. Let alone that what they want to achieve is different. In the past it was about cost control, but now they really want to move towards supplier management capabilities, having better carbon emission reporting, really using demand sensing technologies and the orchestration of your full supply chain. So that is really taking it to the next level, as well as creating it across the chain. So that's definitely not a small task people are looking at. Last one is looking at the operating models. That's also something which is an important topic. So you can do it in-source or outsourced. Fully outsourced brings benefit, but also dependency. And what we really saw in that survey is that moving towards hybrid solutions is probably the way forward. So either having access to technology or to ways of working of a 4PL, LLP, whatever you'd like to call them. That brings me to the end of the short introduction with some key success factors on the 4 topics at hand. So decentralization, definitely there. Regionalization, looking at being closer to the market, being more resilient. Decarbonization, like I said, really look into the footprint product changes. Those are usually 2 great elements to reduce your carbon. The end-to-end visibility, in my view, nowadays more a license to operate than something which can really drive competitive edge, but you need it. And it's more than just, let's say, the footprint. It's about the people, it's about the process and the systems. And last but not least, look at your network design. Try to be responsive, make sure that you can change, because this is definitely important. And it's not about one size fits all, especially with a lot of new companies having finished products as well as spare parts. You really need to be able to have various supply chains for your product market combinations. With that, I would like to hand over to Jeroen. He'll tell you a bit more about how Ahlers is doing these kind of solutions and how to make that happen. Jeroen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Robert. Indeed, very nice insights. I will try to explain how Ahlers puts this into practice and how we try to interact the best possible way with our clients. So I'm Jeroen de Ryck. I'm within Ahlers responsible for the industry and energy division. I will also give a very short introduction on Ahlers. So we are a 110-year-old or 115-year-old in the meanwhile company, still family owned. Our headquarters is based in the port of Antwerp, but since the 1990s we really went global. What do? We offer logistics services, not only to industry and energy, also consumer goods, etc. We do this with supply chain designs, warehousing activities, forwarding activities. In my case, especially project cargo, but we also do trade facilitation, after-sales services. And like I said, we're mostly doing this for the industry and energy sector, electronics, consumer goods, etc. We are in more than 10 countries with more than 700 employees. This is including blue collars. In my division, we actually make tailor-made solutions for the projects and industry sector. And we do this all over the world. And basically, we want to be where our clients source and also where our clients deliver, and to try to stay in full control of the entire supply chain. Coming back to the topics mentioned by Robert and the challenges we and our clients also face, let's say that we want to be also flexible and react to what our clients indeed need. And we see indeed that our clients are looking for alternatives for their current supply chain and their sourcing. This is, for example, due to recent geopolitical situations. Look at the conflict with Russia, the current situation in the Middle East, even the elections, but also the crisis in the Red Sea. So those kind of events, at least, have a big impact on supply chain. It's indeed about the China +1 strategy, but also big disruptions like COVID situation. And where we see as Ahlers that we need to be flexible and agile to stand with our clients. And that's also why, for example, this year alone, we already opened our office in Vietnam. We see a shift, maybe also related to higher import taxes for cargo ex-China, for example, but more and more sourcing in Vietnam and Southeast Asia in general. And we're also based in India. And we see Vietnam indeed as a hub for the further development in Southeast Asia. What we also opened this year is our office in Turkey and actually also Georgia, not only to complete our One Belt, One Road or Silk Road towards Central Asia, but we see also more and more sourcing in Turkey, for example, for Europe or even for US clients. And each region and each country, and we are in many countries, but they all have their own customs, their own regulations, and their own customs regulations, but that's on top. And we want to be where our clients are, and we want to be in full control where they source and also sell their cargo. So in this way, Ahlers tries to react to the needs of our clients. So for us, this means decentralization. So we want to further see the footprint of our clients and reply and be there where our clients are. A next step indeed is this decarbonization, where of course you have the three scopes. The first scope is the direct emission of the production of our clients itself. A second one is the power with whom they generate this. And a third one of the greenhouse gas emissions are, of course, the indirect emissions. On scope 1, we are actually very proud of you, our clients, who are, for example, in the metallurgical or in the cement business or even in the electrification of mining equipments, etc., are active there. So we try to help you to make this a big success. On the indirect emissions, on the scope 2, we can help there, or we can facilitate that by, for example, putting solar panels on our warehousing, or even electrifying our own fleet, etc. But the most interesting part is, of course, within scope 3, which is actually the transport or the greenhouse gas emissions of the transport itself. In overall, transport counts for about one fourth of the greenhouse gas emissions. And when you look at transportation and handling of goods, this is almost 11%. So it's certainly an area where there is a lot of focus on. And our clients also want to see where we can improve and help them at least to measure what we have today, and also offer alternatives in different models and different scenarios using the data available or new data to be generated. And there, I would say, Ahlers, as a sector specialist, based on this, we can work out some model scenarios, and when we can afterwards then also transfer this into live data and reporting. I will give a small fictive example where we say, okay, what if we want to build a new cement plant in Germany and cargo comes from China? We have asked our data team to make a very high level example of this. So what if we ship scenario 1 out of China to Antwerp, for example, and then we truck it to the site in Germany, or if we put it from Antwerp onto inland waterways. Another alternative might be to go directly with rail from China to Germany. And for example, another fourth one can be, for example, if we source parts in Turkey, in India, and the rest, of course, in China, and then move it also on inland waterways. And this is a very high-level fictive example, but we see immediately results there, or at least we can measure it, make scenarios based on the info provided. And for example, you immediately see here the yellow part is inland trucking. If you can compare that to the green part, it's already 1/4 of emissions we can save on the local inland handling in Europe, where we can save around 75% on emissions on that part. If you then look at the rail solution from China directly to Germany, there we see even a lower one. And it becomes really interesting when you make scenarios where you involve different sourcing countries. There you see actually the lowest result. Now, this is a very high-level scenario, of course. It's not taking into account size of the cargo, different origins, so we can all implement that in some kind of model or scenario, and then we can discuss this with the clients, what the best alternative can be, cost-wise, but then also emission-wise. And I think that will become more and more important. Data, gathering these data, measuring what we know, and in the future also anticipate and offer different scenarios to our clients where to source, how to transport the goods, can have a big effect actually on the emissions itself. So I would say involve your logistics service provider, and in particular Ahlers, as soon as possible in the project. Even when you're sourcing, when you're rethinking your entire supply chain, when you're designing new plants and factories, consider your logistics service provider as a go-to to evaluate the different scenarios and move forward. So that's how we see the control and visibility on greenhouse emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, but also on different scenarios where to source. To summarize, actually, I think your logistics service provider, in this case Ahlers, can help you overcome disruptions, or at least try to mitigate the risks. We can also do studies, for example, for a modal shift away from trucking into rail or inland waterways to have a greener solution, and indeed redesign your entire supply chain along with us, or at least consult us in helping you to lower these risks and your sourcing scenarios. And to apply this maybe to a very practical example, I would like to take the Red Sea crisis, where Actually, Houthi rebels, surely most of you are aware, are blocking or hurdling the passage through the Red Sea of merchant ships, attacking them. So a lot of shipping companies are avoiding this and taking a detour around Africa. This, of course, has a big impact on the costs. We see pre-COVID levels of prices on container ships, for example, times 8, 10, even 12 times the price of a normal trade. But also on transit time, we almost double there in transit time because of these different routes. So let's say use Ahlers or your logistics partner as a real partner and discuss the different scenarios to mitigate these risks. I would say, for example, if we can be as soon as possible in contact with your suppliers to organize even the FOB deliveries and to make sure that all documents are in order and the goods are delivered already well in advance to the port, or at least to get this process covered, then you can already win 2, 3, 4 weeks, which can help you a lot to reduce the transit time. Another example is indeed to look for a modal shift. If you put this cargo on rail and not have to go around Africa, this of course can save already up to 40 days. So that's scenarios we consider for our clients. And then maybe not on such a short term, but on a longer term, we can indeed help you also rethinking your entire supply chain, sourcing in Mexico when it comes to US projects, or in Turkey or even Egypt for European projects, make you less dependent on such a long sea voyage and the disruptions we saw here in the last couple of years due to COVID and now with this Red Sea, to rethink this and help you to calculate the best solution. So basically, that's it from my side, Tom. I try to give some practical examples on how we apply the, let's say, more theoretical approach of Robert into practice. So we try to be where our clients are. We try to measure and gather their data and use it in the best way and guide them how to rethink their entire supply chain architecture.
Thank you, Jeroen. This brings us neatly to the panel discussion. What is actually the idea here is that we have a couple of challenges which we would like to discuss. There are different perspectives here. So we have the perspective from Jeroen, who will be representing the industries, and Robert as independent consultant. Gentlemen, the first statement or topic. So we have So we have the sustainability ambitions. I believe it's clear that, let's say from the surveys, from let's say market, everybody is aware of this. However, the complexity is still there. So it's not so straightforward. There are no quick fixes in this. And that brings us actually to a second complexity. What is the willingness to pay within the industry? Because all these ideas, they come at a certain cost. But how does the industry looks at that? Jeroen, maybe can you share something from your client experience?
Well, I saw also it's a question more or less of the audience. So I think it's very relevant. Let's say for the moment within Europe, people are more and more forced to have a look at it, at least measure it. And we see a lot of, let's say, initiatives there, maybe not in my business unit, maybe more for the moment in consumer goods, where you have more regular flows and where you can actually offer and measure the benefits on a longer term of certain regular flows. Within the project business or the heavy industry, when you transport a project, it's mostly one-off. So it's difficult to compare. But we see that at least the companies we work for today are Western companies, that they want to start measuring, they want to see the alternatives and evaluate them. However, let's say the willingness to pay a lot more for this is not there yet. But I think due to regulations, it might not be far away.
Okay. What is your take, Robert?
Yeah, I think maybe to add to that, if you have, let's say, a network setup with also some warehousing linked to that, so not the project business Jeroen is talking about, then, well, like I said, the decentral setup also helps, let's say, reducing carbon. And in general, we don't see huge increases in cost. The supply chain cost, the total landed cost of decentral setup, especially in Europe, I have to say, in the US, are not that different in that sense. And next to that, last week I was at an event and there was a person presenting, and he had an interesting statement. And he stated that let's say, being more environmental friendly comes at a cost. And if we don't do it, it also comes at a cost. So maybe we should, as society, pay a bit more to make sure that, let's say, the children or grandchildren also have a future. And that caught me thinking, and maybe something also to take into account. So maybe it comes at a cost, and I agree that needs to be paid, let's say, by everyone, not only by the manufacturers or worse, the LSPs in that sense.
Yeah. No, okay. Thanks, thanks, gentlemen. I think indeed this will be an evolution. We are not there yet, but nevertheless, I think it's important that everybody takes up the responsibility and also has that North Star and that horizon in mind, and also acts to it. It will not be easy, but this is something that we need to build towards on a day-to-day basis. That brings me actually to a second complexity or type of question that pops up. So, Jeroen, actually, you already briefly touched upon this. There is the legislation and regulation, which on the one hand side is evolving, and on the other side is also different per region. How do you see that, and how do companies, global companies often, how can they react to that complexity or even ambiguity? Robert, is that something that you can confirm? Do you also see that?
The differences in regulations, you mean? And yeah, of course, Europe is really on the forefront. We all know that. So the rest of the world is following there, but it's also getting there. So if you look at the US, as of, let's say, this year, there's also a mandatory on for listed companies to at least register or show or present their CO2 footprint. And that is also a rollout to the smaller companies over the years till I think 2026 or something. Then it should be there. If you move to the other side of the world and look into, for example, Singapore, there's next year, so 2025, the first companies or the bigger ones need to start reporting, and there'll also be a rollout over the years to come. China is lagging behind further, I have to say, but also there we see that in a year or two, the bigger companies need to present their CO2 footprint. Of course, it's not as let's say as far developed as in Europe, but it's definitely an important one. And I think maybe linking to one of the questions which I saw popping up on the screen, if I may, if you look at the CBAM regulations, I think CBAM will expand. CBAM now is, I think, 5 or 6 product groups. In the future, there will be more product groups linked to that. That means there will be certain costs if you want to import steel, cement, and that kind of stuff into the European Union. So that will definitely have impact on, let's say, the network design, and that might force or how do you say, benefit more regional or decentralized solutions in that sense.
Yes. Jeroen, is that something that you also see?
Yeah, our clients are mainly Western companies, let's call it like that, with entities or sourcing all over the world. It's not only about regulatory actions or governments who push it. It's also the stakeholders of these companies, being shareholders or the public environment, let's call it like that, or the general public, I would say, who put pressure on companies to consider it in their products. And yeah, we see this dripping down. And honestly, if you look today at Shanghai compared to 5-6 years ago, with their electrification of their cars, etc., it's not the gray, smoggy atmospheres anymore. So we see the same in Vietnam. Actually, there is a lot of emphasis from government, but also from all the trade organizations there on greener solution. They don't want to become the newest China of 20 years ago, where they cannot see the top of their skyscraper. So it's much more on the agenda than we can already imagine. Of course, when it comes to logistics, then that's still a long way to go, I would say.
Yeah. No, indeed. I think that summarizes it indeed quite well. It's here to stay. It will only become more intense, and it will only evolve for the coming time being. A question specifically for we have quite an international audience here. So we also have people from, let's say, the Central Asia region. And a question which we also received is, okay, there is the intention indeed to develop and to redesign your supply chains, make them more sustainable. But what if your infrastructure is not accommodating this? And how do you live, and what is actually your strategy at that point, considering the potential impact on cost and the potential impact on time, because those are in supply chain often still the main criteria. So what is a specific, can you share some specific examples there? Maybe Jeroen from the experience within the industry and energy business.
Yeah, in the logistics part, I would say indeed we see a lot of action in Europe already with a willingness to shift, for example, to hydrogen, or there is a lot of investments in that, in carbon capture, so to compensate. We see maybe a shift to biofuels as well. Of course, in countries, for example, when you want to move cargo into Central Asia, for example, then it's a different story. I think there we rely more and more on inland waterways, but also on rail solutions. We did a project last year of around 1,000 containers into Kazakhstan. There, of course, if you want to truck these, then the impact is very big. When you put it on rail, it's complex. It takes a while. It needs a lot of, let's say, controlling on the way. But that could be a perfect alternative to save such greenhouse gas emissions, at least. Because indeed, while these biofuels or higher level of trucks are maybe not available in this area, we need to be creative. We also need to be very selective in our supplier selection, who we use as sub-suppliers to move the cargo. And we can play a big role in that with our, let's say, standards, which we are used to. But it will be, it comes at a price, and the infrastructure might not be there yet, but it will dribble down, I'm quite sure.
Okay. Thanks. Robert, do you have something to add here, or?
No, I think Jeroen covered it. I think we should also accept that certain, let's say, the infrastructure or the transport solution in certain areas are less optional. There are less options in certain areas of the world. So that is something to accept there. I mean, that Europe is on the forefront also means that the solutions are a bit more advanced, or not always advanced, but that there are more options available. If in APAC there are less options, you need to work with the elements you have or the solutions you have. I think that's clear.
Yeah, because I also have to, let's say, I'm the timekeeper in this part. So let's say what I would like to say is that I'm very charmed by the fact that we get that many questions. That's really much appreciated. Obviously, unfortunately, we cannot take them all right now. So what I would suggest is that there are, for instance, questions on how we do the calculations, on how we do our framework, what type of frameworks we actually use. What I would suggest here is that at the end of the webinar, we will share our contacts via QR code. Please reach out to us. These are exactly points where we can go in discussion And I think it's important that that knowledge is being shared across, let's say, the industry peers here. There were also some questions on, let's say, what now the optimal strategy is to have a sustainable supply chain setup. In all honesty, there is no quick answer. I hope the even very short webinar in this makes that clear. So you need to look at your locations. You need to know your origins and your destinations. It's a buzzword, but unfortunately, it is really true. You need to look at data. How does it look like your current setup? Where are bottlenecks? What are critical points? What is the impact of changing those? So there we have, as Jeroen mentioned in our let's say on CO2 scenario planning, that's really the tip of the iceberg, and that comes at the beginning of for instance, a project. But it's very key that this is something that you do at the beginning of the project, you do during the project, and even afterwards, you need to analyze. So those are, let's say, the main key takeaways. Know your location, focus on your data, get that straight. Also, know your business. Look at alternatives for sourcing, and also there, don't underestimate the importance or even relevance of a logistics provider. We know our business. We can also provide ideas, and that's really the path that we like to walk with our clients. So I hope those are a bit the key concluding messages that answer already part of the questions. If your question is not being addressed right now, as said, reach out to us. We are definitely open to assist and to go in a deeper discussion. Jeroen, Robert, is there anything you would like to add from your side, concluding as a more concluding message? I will wrap up with the next steps in this one.
Yeah, from my side, indeed, it's I just want to confirm what you just mentioned. It's a combination, and indeed, a logistics service provider can help, can guide as a partner in optimizing this. So it's a combination of a lot of things, even beyond what we said today. And you can always contact me if you want to go into a deeper debate in one-on-one.
And I think I'd like to echo what Jeroen and Tom yourself said. I think the setup, the network is something you can control to a certain extent yourself. For the rest, also use, let's say, the knowledge of partners like Ahlers. I think that's a key one also to reflect. I think that's my final conclusion.
Okay, thanks. So from a more practical side, we will share, let's say, the video recordings of this webinar. We will share recap material with the most important takeaways as we have presented it here. And as you can see with the QR code, there is also the possibility to connect with each of the speakers here in the webinar, and we would be more than open to answer, let's say, other questions offline in this regard. So once again, I would like to thank the audience to be present in this webinar, and please continue to follow us and tune in for the next webinar. Thank you. Wishing you a nice end of the day.